Welcome to ESVN, the Emma Sports Vigeland Network show. My name is Emma Vigeland, and it is the NFL Free Agency Hour. First of all, like the stream, comment, write in the chat if you're listening on podcasts. Give us 5 stars. Help support the show. Leave us a review. All that good stuff. And put on push notifications. Subscribe to the channel, youtube.com/ESVN show. Hello, Bradley. How we doing?
You're giving a lot of orders at the beginning of the show. It's kind of triggering for a man like myself.
Well, there's just like too many decisions to be made.
Yeah, and also I'm a little uncomfortable with women in power. So that also trying to balance that hysteria as well as Aaron Rodgers refusing to make a decision.
You have a lot of emotions.
A lot of pent up, deep seated issues going on right now.
Aaron Rodgers is being an asshole. Like, I'm all for player empowerment, but he holds the fate of many people in his hands right now. We'll get into that in a bit. Both like all of his teammates on the Packers who need to start making moves in free agency, and they currently have this massive cap number on their hands because of Aaron Rodgers. But then also the guys on the Jets who are potentially his teammates. So this is just kind of general selfishness from Aaron Rodgers. But I guess what else do we expect at this point?
Yeah, I guess I feel like my theory is probably like we were saying before the show is that some people have alluded to this on Twitter as well. It's just that I think he probably has some sort of axe to grind with, legacy NFL media scoopsters, and they're picking up on some stuff, and he wants to wait it out until he can sort of be the one to dictate the terms of the announcement.
Right.
If it's already getting to a point where like Trey Wingo, NFL personality Trey Wingo is breaking something to that effect, if kind of in untrustworthy stenographer Dov Kleiman of the NFL Network is leaking some things, and also Jets players are teasing some cryptic tweets. I think there's something in the water, but I just think Rodgers is not willing necessarily yet to green light or pull the trigger. Or it could be nothing. Or it could be nothing. It truly could be nothing.
Yes.
It could be a lot of smoke for no fire. It's just hard. It's just kind of hard to parse right now.
We'll get into that in a sec. Really just right after this. But before we get into the quarterback frenzy, I just wanted to run down what we have so far in free agency.
Yes, let's do it. Because there have been a decent flurry of mid-tier.
Yeah, I mean, this was not going to be a major free agency day, even though, I mean, technically it doesn't open for a little while, but this is the beginning of the legal tampering period. So
right, de facto.
There's no real starting point that is after today, right? Like, if you're allowed to tamper, you're allowed to sign free agents. Jermaine Pratt back to Cincinnati. That's pretty notable.
Great deal. Also, 3 years, $21 million. I think it's a very good. I think it's a good price, good length, and also I just think he became one of the crucial pieces of that defense, and especially with, as we can recall, his vocal frustrations after the Joseph Asai play that ended their season. He was saying he wasn't going to be there anymore, but they were able to make it work, so he'll get another chance with Cincinnati, and I think it's great they can maintain some continuity. As you'll continue to get through this list, we'll see that that's not going to apply to everyone on the defense in Cincinnati.
Well, it is, because they are likely to lose Jesse Bates, right? They franchise tagged him last year, but they drafted Dax Hill, so that's going to be...
You're right, kind of an heir apparent to Jesse Bates. He just, I think, will be too rich for them to even consider signing.
Yeah, they seem to really prioritize having depth at that position. Lou Anarumo does. They've lost Von Bell, though, to Carolina.
Yes, right.
But they'll be able to find some sort of veteran safety to stop gap as Dax Hill probably moves up the depth chart.
Which I also think is a good signing for Carolina. I'll be excited to see how he's used in a Giro Evero defense.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bummer. Safeties don't have a huge market, so it's kind of easy to plug these guys in, which was what makes that Seahawks deal for Jamal Adams
I know,
so
like
dumb.
Unconscionable.
I know.
Good for me, but
good for you. Yeah.
Would you say safeties in terms of like the fungibility, if that's a word? Would you say they're like the running back of defenses, or
linebacker?
You were a linebacker.
Maybe.
That's my. I'm kind of wondering if off-ball linebackers are
Yeah.
sometimes more valued or at least overpaid more than safeties are. But the Jamal Adams is a good trade / extension is a good counterbalance to
I would
that.
say that I would have said safety would have been more valuable than off-ball linebacker like 5 years ago, but in reading the cornerback market has kind of been stagnant
Right.
since Jalen Ramsey got that big contract with the Rams, which they're now having to offload, and he's not. I mean, he didn't even in that Super Bowl win. He did not play that well. He's been on the
Right.
decline. Great, great, great player. But
And he didn't command too much when, like you said, when he got traded to Miami just recently
yeah.
as well, as what I'm sure we'll get to.
We'll get to that for
Yeah.
sure. But is yeah, as you say, I would probably put the linebacker position there. But my point
Yeah.
is just that the secondary I thought was going to be continue to get inflated in
yeah.
terms of value, and it's not really done that. Just
Right.
with the preponderance of the passing game. But Mike McGlinchey leaves San Francisco to go to Denver. He was a first-round pick by the San Francisco 49ers. He was kind of considered a reach, but serviceable player. They also signed another offensive lineman too. The Browns brought back an offensive lineman, Ethan Pocic. And interesting move here too. The Chicago Bears beefing up their offensive line. Got a guy named Nate Davis from the Titans. I don't know a ton about him, so I can't speak to that. But the big news was the Eagles losing Javon Hargrave to the San Francisco 49ers.
Nate Davis for the Browns, I think, is a pretty good acquisition because I think they just honestly need to get from like
They need bodies.
D
Yeah.
plus to C plus or C plus to B plus even, depending on the position. And Nate Davis, I think given the Titans had some struggles there, but I think he, along with Questenberry over there, were two of the more consistent, and Ben Jones, I guess, were three of the more consistent linemen on that Tennessee front. So I think overall Bears have been doing pretty well so far.
Well, they have a lot of money to spend.
Right.
We have some breaking news actually. They're also signing Tremaine Edmonds.
Wow. Okay.
4-year, $72 million deal.
Oh,
Wow. The
interesting.
Bills are
Wow.
not in a good position right now, in my opinion. Like, they do not have a ton of blue chip guys on that defense. And they are sound, fun. I know that Von Miller will return, but he's far from a spring chicken.
And recovering from an injury that took him out of the playoffs. So.
Right, which was late in the season.
Right. Kind of the worst time for it to. They restructured Matt Milano's deal, I think, and he's back with them.
He's very good.
Which is a great, good point of consistency. But I think it's tough that we were talking about kind of the fact that that not as much on the defensive side, but just more, I would say, comprehensively, that there are some X factors missing on this Bills team.
Yeah.
So I think there is a bit of pressure to deliver in free agency in the offseason, or at least both in the offseason, free agency period and the draft. But we'll see if that actually can happen for them.
Right. That is a big deal for Tremaine Edmonds, and they're going to it's front loaded. Apparently, we're seeing this as it breaks, which makes a ton of sense because the Bears have so much cap space this year, and they want to make the roster serviceable to good when they have their quarterback on a rookie deal. They're doing what the Jacksonville Jaguars did last year, and that was quite successful for the Jaguars. And we also will get into that first overall pick trade in a bit. But Javon Hargrave to San Francisco. Wow, the 49ers really value those big bodies in the middle of their defensive line. They had DeForest Buckner, who they traded to the Colts. Then they got a first-round pick back from it. Then
Javon Kinlaw.
Then they
drafted
Javon Kinlaw.
Eric Armstead in the middle as well. Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa off the edge, but they just like rangy, large fellas.
Which is, in my opinion, the right philosophy to build a defense.
The trenches. That's what you want, right?
But some of these guys, like the Dallas Cowboys are built on speed as opposed to size.
Right.
Statistically, they were a very good defense. I don't think that they are one of the best defenses in the NFL. I think once it gets to playoff time, you want big bodies because.
And look at the Eagles, look at the Niners, two kind of similar philosophies there in terms of defensive lines, but also even the Bengals in their front seven. DJ Reader is he's one of those guys where you're shocked by how effectively he can move at his size, and he was one of the most impactful run pluggers, run stuffers in the whole league.
Right. Right. Exactly. So I like that move, even though that's a big contract. Although now they have Jimmy G off the books, so that frees up some space for the 49ers.
And honestly, I think once we see sort of how the quarterback position shakes out for the 49ers, I think we'll be in a similar situation, which is basically see if there's someone who can just plug and play. If it's Brock Purdy again, okay, sure, whatever the case may be, and just dine on the enormous skill position talent on both sides of the ball.
There's a lot riding on. I think they really are trying to get Trey Lance to be the starter next year. There's a lot riding on that.
And that's, I mean, as we've been saying, of course, just because of the lack of it's literally the lack of time served both in college and in the pros, it's just such a massive question mark for a pretty complete team otherwise.
Can you imagine if they took Justin Fields instead of Trey Lance?
And then to think of everything else thereafter, like if the McCaffrey trade still happens,
right?
Like and these two units perform the way that they performed. Yeah, I mean, crazy to consider.
It would be like the greatest show on turf.
Absolutely.
Mike White, speaking of the Jets, to the Miami Dolphins. So that's a Tua insurance policy.
So TikTok, guys.
The Dolphins picked up Tua's 5th-year option. Seems like a weird choice, especially because they could have had more time before the May deadline.
Well, also because I feel like beyond just any sort of question about Tua's play on the field, I also feel like there has been discussions or at least concerns that because of the sheer number of concussions he's had in such a short period of time, whether he will or even should continue to play football. And I'm not even saying
he's doing jujitsu, so he learns how to fall. That's what they're saying.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I mean, I'm like being like,
but I'm not,
that's great, but
I'm not even trying to be flippant about that in the sense like I understand, because I mean he has had like 3 concussions in 6 months. That's like an enormous toll on someone's brain, someone's head. Like,
yeah.
If I would understand the considerations there. So I agree. I think that's kind of a strange move just in terms of hearing those rumblings, but I mean, I guess we just don't know entirely what his situation is right now.
Yeah, it's Tua in Miami for the next 2 years because that 5th-year option is fully guaranteed.
Right.
But then Calais Campbell, unfortunately released by the Ravens.
Yes,
Great player, but it's a bit, he's long in the tooth at this point. He could definitely do broadcasting or something like that. He's awesome.
Yeah, I love him.
Jason Kelce gonna play in 2023. God damn it. Sucks for the rest of the NFC.
Still wants that. He wants another ring.
Yeah, he's a damn good player. Hall of Famer. Case Keenum going to the Texans. Interesting. Clearly they don't believe in Davis Mills to be the backup for whoever they take at number 2, who's going to be like, I think anybody but CJ Stroud.
And I guess that would make sense in the sense of maybe just wanting like a real veteran, like almost like a Chad Henne.
He's a high-end backup, I think. I mean, let's not forget what he did in Minnesota.
Oh, exactly. He's in the sense of like having like a mentor type person there,
right?
With no threat of like taking their job. Really.
Yes, it's perfect for a rookie. The Vikings, speaking of them, they signed Josh Oliver to a fairly large contract, which I think is surprising to some people given the acquisition of TJ Hawkinson. But maybe they're trying to run these 2 tight end sets. They don't like Irv Smith for that role, and they've released Whitey guy. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. Adam Thielen. Yeah.
Well,
I was about to say Whitey McWhite.
Reverse racism.
I'm so sorry.
Extremely triggered.
So maybe they're just gonna try to do that, and then he's gonna get picked up by the Patriots. Joking. Okay, Commanders sign 2 offensive linemen, the right tackle out of Kansas City, and Nick Gates from the Giants, who's a real warrior, but I don't know how much he had a horrible injury and he battled back from it. He can play center or guard. So good for him that he got a contract, but
Oh, so Andrew Wiley from the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Okay, Wiley was pretty good. He was an undrafted guy going into the draft, but he honestly had some good time with the Chiefs, and and then also with the Commanders, they signed Deron Payne to that really big deal as well. They first franchised him, but I guess just to then negotiate his extension. So
which is interesting that they did it before. People are noting because it frees up cap space for them in the immediate, which flies in the face a little bit of them saying, "Oh, we're good with Sam Howell next year."
Yeah, right. It's like, okay,
sure you are.
Yeah, I'm pretty from all of these moves, I understand the offensive line signings for them, but I'm not entirely sure given both the Payne tagging then extending, like what the full like plan is for the team, because that's a lot to commit to Deron. And Deron Payne's a fantastic player. I really like him.
Shares an aging with Dexter Lawrence, and Dexter Lawrence is coming up on an extension soon. So.
Yeah, I imagine based off of this, guys like Dexter Lawrence and Quinnen Williams are going to be paid a pretty penny. But
yes.
I am just kind of curious what the ultimate end game for this Commanders team is.
Yeah.
Given what's been doled out so far, and how I wouldn't consider the quarterbacking situation with Sam Howell at the helm like figured out.
No,
that's not what I would like. I think that's still very much an open question. He only kind of came on
in Mayfield question.
Yeah, right. He only kind of came on in relief duty for Wentz like pretty late in the season, and he looked okay. But I just think it's a lot to put on a 5th round guy.
And if you're re-signing these guys, it kind of makes it seem like you're not going to be tanking for Caleb Williams next year. So. They're in no man's land with the quarterback position. I mean, all 4 quarterbacks are likely going to be gone in the top 10. So
that's my thinking too.
I don't think the Commanders are going to be in the market for
barring a trade, barring like some sort of significant trade.
Right, exactly. And then lastly, really, the big news too is Juwan Taylor, tackle, going to play left tackle for the Chiefs. It seems like 4 years, $80 million. That means they're going to be letting go of Orlando Brown, who's been a tough negotiator in contract talks.
Clearly.
Good for him. But I
think both with the Ravens and the Chiefs, right?
Yeah.
There was sort of like the
maybe he gets some big, contract from a team like the Bears that has a ton of cap space. But I think a lot of teams are wary about his desire to play on the left side. I think some teams want him to play on the right. He wants to be play on the left because that's where you get paid. Totally get it. Right. You want to be the left tackle. But it'll be interesting to see what his market is, since the Chiefs seem to be moving on from him, but at least he got his ring and he got a ton of money with that franchise tag last year.
Taylor's a good player.
Yeah.
I think that actually is probably not a pretty good signing for the Chiefs. Their line is honestly, given what I think obviously we focus on with the Chiefs, they're sort of not underrated, but sort of not under discussed. And they've honestly been pretty good the last 5 years. Like Mahomes and Kelsey, of course, and then Tyreek before he left are the focal points, but they've been a pretty good line for a long time, and they struck gold with Reed Humphrey, honestly, as the center of the future for Mahomes.
That is Andy Reid's most underrated asset.
Total, I agree.
Skill. He is always really. I mean, even these Jason Kelsey came in. That was an Andy Reid guy, right? Am I not mistaken? When he got drafted?
Yes. Oh yeah, I believe so. Let me just double check if that. Yes, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, Jason. I mean, he's spent his entire career with the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah,
to
Kelsey
stand to reason.
Kelsey was drafted in 2011, and I'm almost certain Reid was the coach.
Yeah. Andy Reid is really good at eyeing offensive linemen. He was the Eagles during that time period. So, he's so if I were another team signing Orlando Brown, I would be very worried that Andy Reid let him walk, because that makes because he's that's honestly what makes him such an amazing offensive coordinator, or offensive play caller, I should say, as well, is that he understands how to set his quarterback up to make these throws, because he has such a good understanding of the protection. And offensive linemen for sure. And
as we were saying in the Super Bowl, it was like the biggest thing when we were recapping the game was literally just decoding the Eagles' rules.
Yeah.
Just knowing what their tells were.
Right.
To drift into different parts of the field.
I just had another thought about Eric Bieniemy, but shoot, I totally lost my train of thought. Also, they might value the left tackle position less than other teams.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They're not going to be like, we're going to pay the left tackle at the top of the market, because they know Mahomes can escape all the time.
And I also think what they're probably also thinking is that, as we saw with Tyreek, I think it's mainly that they know that they're going to have. We're sort of touching on this with some of the other great quarterbacks who were up for extensions, that the Chiefs already are in this situation where they know that they have to retool,
right,
with the understanding that Mahomes will take up a pretty significant portion of their salary.
Well, yeah. So although he's getting paid $40 million a year for for 10 years. Like, he took a very team-friendly contract. Daniel Jones is getting paid. Nick.
Right,
I mean, like,
right.
the market has gone so
It's
far
ballooned.
past that contract that, like, honestly...
And the cap's going to rise, too. So it's like...
Yeah, he should ask for a raise, but he might not because he's doing the Brady, like, I'm taking less.
Right.
So the team gets built. And at a certain point, you know... The only thing I don't like about that is that it hurts other quarterbacks in negotiations. Be like, oh, you're going to make the same as Mahomes?
You can use it as a reference. Like, agents can use it as, or teams can use it as a reference point to flatten other players' salaries.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I don't like. But but from his perspective, he's like, I could get $10 million in endorsements by just doing one State Farm commercial.
Sure,
yeah. Doesn't matter. And we will talk about Lamar Jackson relative to the quarterback contract in a bit, but okay, so has the Jets thing happened yet, or is he still toying with us?
Still has not happened.
My God.
A lot of smoke, no fire yet.
I don't understand his desire to keep everyone in the dark, even though that's what he clearly learned from this darkness retreat.
That's what he learned. It's all he knows now.
I was born in the darkness.
You were raised in the darkness. I was born in it.
Let's play this clip of Packers team president. Murphy, Mark Murphy, I believe his name is. He, in this Rodgers saga, where it wasn't necessarily clear how the Packers were going to play it, right? Because I think it was clear to everybody that they want to move on. They're done with the drama. He didn't even play that well last year, and so they want to see what Jordan Love has, especially because he's going to be entering, I think, his 4th year. They have to pick up his 5th-year option by May. That's the deadline. And Rodgers has essentially been very quietly shown the door. But this clip, which was from last week, was interesting to me because there wasn't much movement on the Jets front with the trade. I think the Packers were getting antsy, like, we don't want this guy on our team anymore. He's bringing way too much drama. His cap hit is massive, which good for Rodgers. He negotiated this insane contract extension where he holds all the cards. And so they essentially just stopped tiptoeing around Rodgers. Here he is, Mark Murphy coming out and saying it, speaking about Rodgers in the past tense last week.
Yeah, I think, I can't get into all the details, but it's a situation where I think we wanted to help Aaron achieve what he wanted, as well as the Packers, and hopefully, create a situation where it's kind of a win for both sides.
At this point, is it entirely up to Aaron Rodgers on what he wants to do? And then what has the communication been like the last few days and the last few weeks?
Yeah, we're still in discussions. I can't really get into a lot of the specifics.
15 years ago, this Packers organization has been through something very similar with Brett Favre, even with the Jets involved in all of that. How strange has that been? And then what has this organization learned from 15 years ago now using in this year?
Yeah, well, obviously we're very fortunate to have back-to-back Hall of Fame quarterbacks. And yeah, it was very early in my tenure, so I remember it very well with Brett's situation. And, it's kind of the happens in our game. Very few players play for only one team. And obviously Brett had a great career, Aaron had a great career here, and regardless of what happens, Aaron will be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, he'll be in our Hall of Fame, and we'll bring him back, he'll retire his number. And but this is just one of the things that you go through as a team. And again, we want to try to achieve something that's good for both Aaron and us.
Do you think that all of this will be resolved in the next few days? Of course, that March 15th New Year deadline is what everyone has in their back of their mind.
Yeah, I think ideally for everybody would be to have this resolved before the start of free agency in March 15th.
Does this Packers organization believe that Jordan Love could be the face of the franchise, the future, the starting QB for this team?
Yeah, we have a lot of confidence in him. I think, we drafted him and developed him. A lot of credit goes to our coaches, and to Jordan. But we do think he's ready.
Thank you so much.
So that's really interesting to me, right? Again, we're still waiting. We have that Ringer video too, right? This is the epitome of what Rodgers is doing right now. But he that was a very subtle move to publicly say that to a reporter that, that's not Ian Rappaport or Adam Schefter. It was just a quiet, decision to speak to the media very subtly about Aaron Rodgers in the past tense. He'll be back. We'll retire his jersey. The reality is that the Packers have no leverage in this situation. They have none, except if they, want to leverage the fans and the way the fans feel about the team, and the fans feel about Aaron Rodgers. Because that's the one thing about Aaron Rodgers. He loves all the attention, right? He loves to take his time and manipulate public opinion, and I think he gets a kick out of it. But he doesn't want to piss off the Packers fans. I do believe that. And I think that was Mark Murphy trying to say very subtly that this is the Packers' official position. We're trying to move on to Jordan Love. And if this doesn't happen, and if Aaron Rodgers' massive cap number is still on the books, that's on him. Because this almost happened last year to Denver with Nathaniel Hackett. Rodgers backed out at the last minute, and they got Russell Wilson. And that didn't work out that great. But that was the whole reason behind the Nathaniel Hackett hire, who's now with the Jets. So is this going to be another situation where a team sets the table for a guy who ends up having cold feet, and does he want to retire? I don't know. I mean, we're in the middle of a wait and see period right now. And that March 15th date on Wednesday is the new league year, but the free agency's basically already started. The Ringer had this funny meme of from The Office saying that this is exactly what Aaron Rodgers is doing in free agency.
Let me see. What do I want? What do I want? I'm looking for someone who everyone is listening to me.
That's basically it. That's really it. I mean, and so Bradley, I turn to you with all of that prelude as a Jets fan, who is probably refreshing Twitter every 2 seconds that you possibly can. What does it feel like to have this mercurial kind of, mercurial is the only word for it, diva-ish man holding your franchise hostage? And I will say this, I think, before I saw Patrick Mahomes play, I thought Aaron Rodgers was the most talented quarterback to ever play the sport.
Well, it's slightly cut off in the broadcast, but in the video, the last image of Rainn Wilson's face just going is the Jets, which I agree with in terms of the sentiment is just like,
yeah.
What are we doing here? And I don't even mean it in like a derisive way in the sense that I don't think it's like, well, I'm conflicted. I think in a very short-term way, it could be impactful for the team to have a clear upgrade, even at turning 40 this year, 2022-23 season notwithstanding Aaron Rodgers. I still think that there's a possibility that he could really raise the ceiling on a team that I think was really pretty set up in a lot of different capacities in terms of the roster. Like
on paper,
in the sense like there's no telling whether immediately Aaron Rodgers entering that system means that the team will be catapulted to an 11-6, 12-5 season or whatever the case may be. With all that being said, from a process standpoint, I don't think it's that smart. Because I don't know how much I want to pay 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers, nor do I know how long he'll play or what kind of guarantees he will ask for in terms of length and money in his contract, and how much of that would be guaranteed.
The Packers don't have any leverage to ask for anything meaningful in the trade. It's something respectable they'll ask for, right?
Right.
And Rodgers may actually, from an ego perspective, not want to be like traded for a second round pick or something. He might be like, hey, I'm worth a first or something. But you're also trading for that massive contract and the headache that comes with Aaron Rodgers.
And I think that's part of it too, is taking on the remainder of the contract, the age, and also just like his nature in New York, like in the New York media atmosphere.
That's not a false narrative that the New York media atmosphere is more intense. We live in it, right? And
he's petulant and kind of
petulant's another good word for him.
He's petulant and kind of pissy and annoyed generally in like the Pat McAfee echo chamber that he lives in, to say nothing of like the Green Bay regional media that gets to talk to him every once in a while. He's gonna have like New York Post reporters annoying him and making like crass and punny headlines about him. Like it's not going to be irritating for him, especially knowing who he is.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you could draw some parallels to how Kyrie Irving was dealing with the New York media, and that's the Brooklyn Nets media.
Exactly.
That's not the New York Jets media, right? So I would be a little bit worried about the headlines, but at the same time, the upside is tremendous. I understand why the Jets brass is going out there and kissing his ring, his singular ring, but God, I mean, I would never make that joke in the past, but he's annoying me right now, so I'm making that joke. But yeah, I mean, what's the Jets' plan B if this falls through?
Well, that's the other thing is now they're in a position where, in terms of like a big swing, this is the only one to take. Derek Carr is in New Orleans. Jimmy Garoppolo just signed with Las Vegas and is going to the Raiders to reunite with Josh McDaniels. Their higher end backup, the 3 to 5 game savior of their team of the last 2 seasons, Mike White, is now backing up Tua in Miami. There aren't that many more options.
Yeah.
Unless
Baker Mayfield.
I've been
also someone who might be difficult in the New York media market. Are they going to do the Lamar Jackson thing? I don't think so.
I've had Jacoby Brissett stock for quite some time, and I wish. And unfortunately, I think that they're a little bit too headline minded and too myopic to even consider that as an option, which I think would be honestly a pretty good option given the who would be around him. But I think this kind of has to work for the front office and the coaching staff, given everything that's all the smoke around it. And if it doesn't, I think there are going to be many tough questions to be asked as to what exactly will the quarterback situation be going into next season, especially as we've talked about at length many times, everything that happened with Zach Wilson on and off the field. Like, what does it look like? What does that relationship look like? Is there any consideration that he would actually play? Like, I have no idea.
Zach Wilson has said that, in terms of Rodgers coming there, I think that might be the one person that Zach Wilson would sit back and respect because that's his childhood hero. And you can see that in the way he plays, right?
Right. And then I guess makes sense, right? It's not, you're making a call for a legend, not like another similar tier younger player that's going to be more of like a kind of manufactured QB competition from the outset. Like, for example, if it's Mayfield, if it were to be Baker instead of Rodgers after all of this pans out, the Baker Zach Wilson QB competition in training camp headlines will be endless regardless of what happens.
Oh my God.
And that is probably
that's the entitled white boy competition at quarterback.
And honestly, I hate to even wish this into existence, but because I'm a Jets fan and Occam's razor is usually sharp and correct, it's probably going to happen. It's like that might be the reality we're living in, as opposed to an Aaron Rodgers to the Jets fantasy. But we'll see.
Yeah, man, it is funny that both of them come from like kind of privileged backgrounds and seem to have difficulty with some of their teammates, Baker Mayfield and Zach
and
Wilson.
Weirdos.
Yeah, a little bit. All right, well, we're waiting and seeing. The last update I have is Jesse Bates to the Falcons.
Yes, I just saw that as well. That's
big contract.
That seems like a good deal, honestly.
I mean, good deal for Jesse Bates, but
I think with every guy in the kind of this range, the teams that are going to be after them are almost certainly going to be overpaying them.
I know. I mean, that's why I don't expect to hear anything from the Giants today. I mean,
Right.
they're now smartly run, and they are gonna. You don't chase on the first day of free agency. Good teams don't do that. Although the Giants have been doing that for many years during Dave Gettleman. So we wait and see. We wait and see with Aaron Rodgers now. We're going to be taking some calls later in the show. Henry Gold says, Ham, are we going to get any March Madness coverage this Thursday? No Thursday show, but Will from Indiana has said he will call in to give us a March Madness rundown. I'm not sure if you're still able to do that, Will, but around 5:15ish, we'll take some calls. The number is 646-257-3920. We can talk March Madness, all that good stuff. My college sports knowledge is pretty limited, and I really only check it out for draft purposes. So I'm just getting into NFL college stuff. And I guess that's a good way to actually transition into talking about this Bears news now, because the Bears just made a blockbuster trade on Friday afternoon, or at least that's when they announced it. The Bears have traded the number 1 overall pick to the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers are sending Chicago DJ Moore, who is an underrated wide receiver, in my opinion. He's really kind of like a quintessential athletic freak out of Maryland, and he hasn't been able to reach his full potential, even though he's had multiple 1,000-yard-plus seasons behind the line of scrimmage. It's just that the Panthers' quarterback situation has been notoriously terrible.
That, I think, is probably his biggest calling card, is that we've seen the quarterbacks that he's played with and how he's been able to be productive regardless of that. Like the quarterbacks he's played with are the husk of Cam Newton, PJ Walker, Sam Darnold, and Baker Mayfield.
Yuck. Then the Bears also will get the number 9 overall pick from the Panthers, a 2023 second-round pick, the first in 2024 from the Panthers as well. So that's 2 first and a 2025 second-round pick from the Panthers, which is a significant haul. I've been seeing everyone say, steal from Ryan Poles, steal. For the Bears' perspective, it's a great haul. It's a great haul. I don't think it's a bad deal for the Panthers either, if they get CJ Stroud, who I think they're going to be going after, who I've loved for months. I've thought he was the most complete prospect. Like, I have deep concerns about Bryce Young's size. And I don't think he's comparable to Kyler Murray in terms of athleticism, even though he seems like, he's like a professional and really smart. I get that. I just don't know how much that translates to the NFL. You got to have concerns about Will Levis's accuracy and his inconsistency. And very similar with Anthony Richardson, who's only a 1-year starter out of Florida. So the one sure thing, in my opinion, is CJ Stroud.
I think so. I think what it is so far in terms of like the dialogue around these 4 guys is that they all have some distinct flaws in one way or another. Like they aren't like there isn't like a slam dunk number 1 pick a la like Trevor Lawrence in his draft or Joe Burrow and like guys like that in this class. However, Bryce Young's size, I think, will be a concern, and what I mean by that is in the sense that Dane Brugler, the draft expert at The Athletic, has said this, is that basically that's a team thing in the sense of Bryce Young factually is small, like especially for this era of quarterbacking, this era of quarterbacks. Like, it's going to come down to whether a team is comfortable with that. Like,
well,
sure,
you shouldn't be. In my opinion, with
that's the question, right? Is should you be? Which I'm with you. I think both me and you are much more traits oriented in terms of either take the big swing or even the concern with CJ Stroud is that he's much less of an out of structure player. However, one, I don't think that's necessarily something that's completely off the table. He's very young, he has the size, and he's clearly athletic. And 2, he showed that in the Georgia game. So yeah, on the biggest stage for him and his team, he showed that he was able to make out of structure.
He made
throws,
some runs,
and he showed that he was able to scramble. I understand it's a very small sample size, but I don't think a guy who is 6'3", 220, or whatever the case may be in terms of his measurables, and that young can't ultimately develop that skill of kind of the intelligence to know when to scramble and drop out of the pocket, and also how to make out of structure throws. He's really like surgically accurate in the pocket. He's pretty ready made to be an NFL starter.
And that's what I've been told every team wants, by the way. Like, I mean, everyone was saying that I shouldn't like Josh Allen when he was coming out in the draft. I shouldn't want the Giants to take him instead of Saquon Barkley, because he wasn't accurate enough. But like, I like that he was backyard and you could teach him the more surgical stuff. Looks like that panned out. I mean, same with Lamar Jackson in that same draft. Like, you know, I just don't like the hypocrisy of that. It's like CJ Stroud does everything right in terms of the quarterback position, and he does have the athletic upside, but now he's too much of a pocket guy that's doing everything the way the coaching staff asks. Like, I don't understand how that's a knock. I know that you're not saying it. I'm just saying that if that's what the actual knock is.
And I mean, look at and I'm not even comparing these guys because, you know, Trevor Lawrence was a higher, well, you know, he's 6'5". Like he had a few inches on CJ, and I think was more of a clear-cut number one pick in his draft class, but his calling card was not his ability to make out of structure plays. His calling card was similar to Stroud's in that he was a incredibly like stout, accurate pocket passer, who could essentially make every throw imaginable over the middle and in the intermediate areas. And then also there was upside for his ability to throw deep and scramble because of being hard not to when you're 6'6", 230, 220 like he is. I just think there's the capability that Stroud has a lot of the answers to things that some quarterbacks don't ever really have the answers to. And the only thing he doesn't is the improvisation, which I think that's partially mental and physical.
Coaching.
And I think he has the athleticism to accommodate that. And he does seem like a person who also will be, this is more anecdotal or than anything else, but I do genuinely think he would be someone to learn that, who is capable to internalize that and add that to his game.
So long story short, I mean, we don't even know if they're taking Stroud, but I think he's the slam dunk quarterback one. And I haven't done even look, I'm just watching on highlights and things like that. And that's, but I also from traits, and I was incredibly impressed in that Georgia game. I think that they're going to take CJ Stroud. I think a lot of this Anthony Richardson hype is a way to throw people off the scent. But now that so just to return to the trade itself, it's being the Bears did get a haul and they won. I mean, but I don't think that the Panthers necessarily lost. They've lost in this situation because the owner has been so ridiculously impulsive up to this point that they don't have draft assets in the way that they should have them.
There's a reason the cupboard seems bare at certain positions because of what David Tepper did before.
Yes, but making the move in terms of just in a vacuum, these assets to get CJ Stroud.
Right.
If they end up doing that, I think that is a win for the franchise.
You have your potential quarterback of the future who is on a rookie contract, is young, very talented with like you said, athletic upside, with Frank Reich as what could be the architect for that player.
And he wants a pocket passing guy, by the way, Frank Reich. So that's why I think this is inevitable. But and then from the Bears' perspective, they're making these splashes in free agency because they have so much cap space. They're doing what the Jaguars did last year with Trevor Lawrence, getting these veterans to just make the team much more serviceable. And the NFC North is wide open, by the way.
Which, by the way, if we'll recall some recent history, I mean, the Jags were kind of universally panned initially for what they did with the spending spree.
Christian
Kirk getting too much money, Brandon Scherf getting too much money, Foye Oluokun getting too much money. You would and honestly, like I it's not, that doesn't necessarily mean just because one-off season did ultimately pan out despite conventional wisdom indicating the contrary before there were any results associated with it. That doesn't necessarily mean for the Bears that A, it can't work again, or B, it's not like a sound strategy, because if you have the money to spend, you're
do it.
And you're not do it, spend it, but also, especially almost I would say to a larger degree than the Jaguars, there are so many complete, I would basically say blank slate position groups all over the team. That defense is almost, Eddie Jackson aside, entirely anonymous, basically.
Yeah.
And you could
They just traded away Robert Quinn.
right trade away Robert Quinn, trade away Roquan Smith.
Yeah.
Like you can do and of course don't all the Bears fans don't come at me. I love Jahan Brisker and I love Kyler Gordon. They're going to be second-year players. They're rookies, so like they need reinforcements as well.
Yeah, so you get these kind of good, solid NFL players on that team. I mean, Tremaine Edmonds, that's awesome, and then
Already an instant upgrade to their secondary.
and so Tremaine Edmonds plays linebacker, but
linebacking core.
It's
yeah,
okay.
Sorry about that.
But yeah, no, it's like then they can also, with that 9th overall pick, get one of the offensive linemen that's going to be available for them in the top 10, Paris Johnson or Skoronski, that guy out of Northwestern. So, or whoever else they want. I mean, there's a ton of pass rushers in this draft too. So, of course, the Bears ultimately are the winners of this, but they were able to get in this position because of circumstance, because the team was so bad last year, because they had Justin Fields. And look, I was on the record saying maybe they should consider trading Justin Fields. But as I worked that out in my mind, it was more of my concern for Justin Fields playing on a team that continued to be bad and if that would hurt his career as a running quarterback going forward. Now that I've seen the moves that they're making to make sure that the team is much more supportive of him, I think the Bears fans should be very happy. But I don't think Panthers fans should be unhappy at this point either. That's really my take on that trade.
And I will have more to say about some of these position groups in the draft after I choose some more tape. But my first instincts for that, when you brought up his Paris Johnson, is that his name?
Yeah.
From Ohio State, and Peter Skoronski from Northwestern. I don't think they could go wrong with either pay, but I think Paris Johnson is more a one position guy. Like he's mostly just a left tackle, but he's really quite athletically gifted and very fun to watch. But Skoronski seems to be one of those guys who could basically play any position on the line, which I guess it might be if they're looking to do that as opposed to go for one of the that rusher out of Texas Tech, the edge rusher out of Texas Tech.
I mean, I think he's gonna go before 9. Tyree.
Oh yes, that's his name. I forgot his last name. Tyree something.
Yeah. Me too.
But he, if he goes before, then I honestly think getting a pretty blue chip offensive lineman, either at left tackle or kind
Wilson.
of a Swiss Army knife type of guy, would be fantastic for Justin Fields.
Yeah.
Tyree Wilson.
Who knows how
Wilson.
far Jalen Carter falls? Even
yes,
given he had that incident.
Yes,
although I think he's going to be okay. Will Anderson could fall because someone could fall in love with a Tyree Wilson, who probably has more of an upside than Will Anderson in terms of just measurables. But they could get one of those great corners like Christian Gonzalez. So the Bears are in a great position for sure. All right. So anything on the Rodgers front? I know that I am a broken record at this point, but
drum roll, please. Patrick Peterson signed with the Steelers.
Oh, okay, great. All right, we're gonna open up the phone lines if you want to be in waiting on the phone. We'll probably get to you in like 20 minutes. All right, I put off this Lamar Jackson conversation for way too long at this point. So Lamar Jackson, this is very complex. The labor dynamics, the league dynamics, the billionaire collusion dynamics behind Lamar Jackson's contract negotiations. It's fascinating. It's also really depressing to me that Lamar has not gotten paid yet. Today on his podcast, Adam Schefter, who you have to take everything he says with a grain of salt, especially because he's often a mouthpiece for agents. Like, he will make contracts look way bigger in terms of their overall value than they actually are. Like, for example, Daniel Jones's contract, this was Ian Rappaport who initially reported it, but those guys are interchangeable, right? He said 4 years, $160 million. Big contract for Daniel Jones. The Daniel Jones contract is a 2-year contract, front-loaded with guarantees, and it's like around $38 million a year to start off the contract, which is middle tier quarterback market money in this current in this current climate. So again, take these kinds of insiders with a grain of salt. But in this instance here, what Schefter is saying, there's no agent involved with Lamar Jackson. So I'm inclined to believe these numbers are real, especially because this is what we have heard repeatedly, and Lamar Jackson's camp has not been able to really refute it, of what the Ravens offered Lamar Jackson last year. Here's Adam Schefter on his podcast, and based on all of that context, I'm inclined to believe that these are the real numbers.
Because Mort and I reported on this last September when Lamar Jackson was offered a deal that he turned down that included, at the time it was offered, $133 million due at signing. $133 million guaranteed. The contract also had injury guarantees that brought the guarantees up to $175 million. And it then had a springing guarantee that could have brought the value of the contract, the guaranteed money in the contract, to $200 million in guarantees. Those guarantees were way more than Kyler Murray got from Arizona, way more than Russell Wilson got from the Denver Broncos. And yes, those were the actual numbers, and that was the situation. So those really are the guarantees for Lamar Jackson. It also was reported on the injury guarantee, $168 million, but another $7 million was guaranteed that would have come due on the 5th day of 2026, making it $175. So the real guarantees in Lamar's contract were $133 million at signing, $175 with injury, and $200 million on a springing guarantee that would have kicked in if he was still on the roster on the 5th day of the league year in 2026. So maybe it's not a guarantee, but he would have had to been on the roster for 3 more years, and then 25 more million would have become guaranteed to make it 200 million. Bottom line, Lamar Jackson passed up a lot of guaranteed money in the hopes that he would get a fully guaranteed contract. And not to say that some team won't give that to him now.
They won't.
But
yeah. That hurts to hear, because that's generational money for Lamar Jackson, who I want desperately to get paid. One of my favorite players in the league. Great teammate, great guy. But he is doubling down on this no agent thing. And the sticking point, as Schefter kind of said, seems to be that he wants his contract fully guaranteed, which has only really been done one time so far. And that's with Deshaun Watson. And that's because the Browns are idiots. And they were held over a barrel and did a contract that the rest of the league was like, are you kidding me?
Never again.
Never again.
Hashtag never again.
So that's when collusion comes into play here, right? And I saw people were throwing this out there, and I'm inclined to agree with it as a concept of collusion against Lamar Jackson. But then at the same time, the rest of all these NFL insiders and personalities were like, there's no collusion involved, because as these Lamar's non-exclusive status became public last week, immediately the Atlanta Falcons said we're not pursuing Lamar Jackson. The Miami Dolphins were not pursuing Lamar Jackson. Well, why not, right? Why not? He's a league MVP. He's one of the 10 guys generously in the NFL right now who are going to change your team, and is a dynamic player, comes to work, does his thing. Why not at least explore it? Why rule it out from the outset? And I think that's where collusion comes in here, right? Because when NFL insiders were refuting it, there's like, they did not all come to decide we're going to screw Lamar Jackson. No, that's not what the definition of collusion is. That's an incredibly high bar, and you're setting it there on purpose, honestly. Owners don't need to come into smoke-filled rooms and say, all right, we're going to go get Lamar Jackson, right? For there to be collusion. There can be an agreement after the Browns made that deal with Watson. Sorry, I just need a sip of water. My voice is getting raspy.
That's okay.
There can be an agreement among the billionaire class that we're not doing that again. And that's collusion, right? It doesn't mean that Lamar Jackson's contract demands are realistic right now. The agreement between billionaires to draw a line in the sand on a fully guaranteed contract after the Deshaun Watson deal is collusion. It's just not Lamar-specific collusion. And that still counts too. So the NFLPA, who's handling these negotiations on behalf of Lamar, has every right to be pissed at that. For all of these teams from the outset to say, we're not even going to explore it. We're not even going to look into it. That, I think, is a really fishy situation. Now, Lamar is being unreasonable in what he's asking for. That's the other side of this. But who knows, right? I mean, Lamar turned down that contract last year. He could be like, all right, I need to figure something out to get a new contract. His situation, his position on his contract could have changed by now. So for the rest of the teams to rule that out, that's where it's incredibly fishy. That's where collusion actually is happening in this instance. And I think it's irrefutable. Even if Lamar's not going to get what he wants, and even if that was really dumb of him to turn down that deal where he would have gotten paid more than Kyler Murray and more than Russell Wilson, for him to be obsessed with getting over the Deshaun Watson hump, like, dude, just this is generational wealth. Take the money and run with all that injury guarantee and stuff. And he's not going to get that deal. Again, he's not going to, given the fact that he was injured in December for the last 2 years. I'm sad to see that money essentially be set on fire for him.
And I think you make a great point that collusion, I think, the word gets bandied about and is sort of like given this connotation where it's like, oh, people are being hysterical or people are being like alarmist when they use that word. And I say that both in a context of sports, but also politics, obviously.
Right.
But with that being said, you're absolutely right in the sense that collusion is not only like Blofeld, the Bond villain, stroking his cat, turning around, being like, "I've got you now." We were this. It's this grand design that we've always had. Like, it's a chilling effect that can come from certain league events. Like it could be just as simple as all 31 other owners were like, that Deshaun Watson thing, that's a one-time thing. We're not doing that. We're not.
They did it with Kaepernick.
Right.
It doesn't need to be like sign on the dotted.
It's not.
Kaepernick, it was even more explicit, but they collude.
But it's not like an email chain where
Yes.
it's every owner having a similar interest making the same decision.
Yeah, Kaepernick was more, actually, I shouldn't say that. That was this
More
guy's
blatant,
no
for sure.
Yeah,
and for a political reason more than an economic reason.
this one is more right. This is a
we're not guaranteeing this type of money anymore
to anybody.
Let alone Lamar Jackson.
It's not about Lamar personally, although I will say, I mean, of course you have to take into consideration there is going to be systemic racism about
absolutely.
The Ravens are not that kind of. The Ravens have been a model organization as much as you can be for players and the treatment of players in the NFL for as long as I have been following the sport. It's why I love the way they do business and why I am very skeptical sometimes of Lamar and like the not Lamar, because he doesn't really say anything publicly, but he has like this whole fan base that is saying like the Ravens are treating him badly. I don't think they are. I don't. And until this point, they haven't been leaking contract details to the media.
I think what might be, if anything, inflaming or exacerbating tensions in negotiations between team and player is that there's no, as we've said before, there's no conduit between team and player.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very difficult, especially when there's a lot riding on this. He's a franchise quarterback. He's 25, 26 years old, won an MVP 3 seasons ago. Like, this is not like a pedestrian player negotiating for like a smaller contract.
Yeah.
This is kind of existential for both Lamar and the Ravens. And the fact that there's nobody representing him but himself, the on-field and off-field is indistinguishable. Those conversations are taking place with the same people, and they don't always do that. And I think that's part of where that potential or at least perceived animosity might be coming from people, Lamar supporters, thinking that that's going on. But I think it's because there's no safety net. There's no between team and player
And media. Like, another
Absolutely
thing
right.
Agent does is they call media and they pitch stories like the Ravens are lowballing Lamar, and then that gets that over the finish line.
Right.
Or he's also losing out on, and it truly breaks my heart that he has Lamar Jackson gotten a major endorsement deal. Like,
not that
I saw
I
he
know
responded
of.
to PFT on Twitter about it, saying that they had heard that he lost a major shoe deal, and he was like, LOL, laughing, right? But how would you even know, Lamar? Like, you're handling the football stuff. You have a team, your mom or whoever is dealing with the business side. Like, there's probably a lot of teams that were like, not teams, brands, like, I'm not doing business with a guy that doesn't have an agent because it's not easy for us to do business. Part
Right.
of the expediency of all of this for them is having to, like, a relationship with an agent. Agents have there are multiple quarterbacks who have agents, right? Quarterback agents and agencies. Like, Athletes First is a quarterback's agency. If Lamar just signed with them, they'd have immediate connections right away with a shoe brand, or something like that. And so I'm sad to see this generational talent not cash in on his value, because I truly love Lamar Jackson. Like,
And that's where it mostly stems from. Is like, I'm not even trying to say this to minimize like his desire to represent himself or have it be very close to these deliberations be very close to his, playing it close to the chest and keep it close to his family. Like, to an extent, I can understand that, especially if someone like him is seemingly a little bit more insular and not as inclined to have a larger
seek
circle.
the spotlight.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand
I like that about him.
And that right. There's nothing to be critical about that in particular. It's more that I worry that the dynamic as it is now is potentially hurting his value.
Yeah.
And making it harder for him to receive more. And also, as you said, there has to be a reason. It is too coincidental, at least in my mind. I'm not trying to be conspiratorial here, to see 6 to 8 teams almost at the same exact time leak that they're out on him.
Yeah.
The Falcons, the Patriots, the Raiders. I don't know if it was the Jets also, but there were a few other teams all essentially in the same time frame saying we're out on Lamar. After the news of the non-exclusive tag being assigned to him, we're out on Lamar.
And for them to even say that publicly, teams never say
Do you
we're
need
out
to
on
say
a
that
guy.
publicly? You could also just not sign him, and
We're
we'd also
exploring every option.
Right.
That would be a normal team response.
It's just interesting to think that knowing the particulars, knowing that he wants a guaranteed contract, with the picks involved, the tag being involved, that these teams would say, you know what, a 25-year-old former MVP who's still probably in the prime of his career and one of the most electric athletes on the planet, no, we're good.
Yeah, right.
We're actually good. We'll go sign Baker Mayfield instead. We'll stay with Desmond Ridder instead.
Just make the call.
Sam Howell, we'll just go with Sam Howell instead.
Yeah, well,
Sam Ellinger instead. It's bullshit, frankly. It's bullshit.
It really is. I wonder if he even, like, without a guaranteed contract, plays on that deal. He might do the Le'Veon Bell and sit out, right, on the franchise tag.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. It's possible. I think that's the other weird, crazy thing, is that anything is still possible now that he's on the non-exclusive tag. And it's just.
I'm really sad that it's gone down this way.
It's I think the more it progresses without any resolution, the worse it might be.
It's like two sides that I actually really like. Like,
right,
the
Ravens
as an organization and Lamar Jackson. And I think that they offered him a fair deal, but the league I don't like. Like, the rest of the teams I don't like.
I'm curious about what you think about this, and we can obviously move on from this after this. I'm just curious that the Ravens negotiated with Roquan Smith to sign an extension, and he represents himself.
It's so much harder with a quarterback.
I think that must be it, though, because, I mean, obviously, good for Roquan that he got the money that he deserves. He's one of the best, if not maybe the best linebacker in the league.
Yeah.
He deserves that money, but I just think it's interesting that can get negotiated and resolved pretty quickly, and that this has been kind of a open question for months on end now.
Yeah.
From the middle of the season to now, basically.
Well, yeah, and I think Roquan Smith was just a little bit more willing to actually negotiate as opposed to saying this is my demand. And it needs, that's what Lamar's doing. He's just said, nope, line in the sand. And It's an unreasonable line in the sand. So, huge bummer. All right, we're gonna take a quick call. My voice needs a bit of a rest because we have our college basketball expert on the line, Will from Indiana. Hello, Will.
Hello. Is everything going okay?
Yeah, I mean everything's going fine. I just I didn't see anyone this weekend, so I just didn't really talk. I realized, like, I watched a lot of sports and TV, and I went to the gym and stuff, but I didn't talk to many people. I was home alone this weekend, and now I'm realizing, like, my voice is just not used to talking, so I'm getting a little raspy.
I mean, as long as I get to, talk college basketball with my two favorite sports pundits, then that I figure that's a win. So
for sure. So Will from Indiana.
Yeah.
So I finally surpassed Colin Cowherd for you, huh, Will?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, Clay Travis was number one.
That's right.
I mean,
we're moving up in the power rankings.
Jason Whitlock, or have we superseded him at this point?
oh man, with him saying that everything is like a Marxist conspiracy theory, I mean, that's just like,
it's tough.
You all have a long way to go.
It's top tier analysis.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Exactly. So
yeah,
let's March Madness in a few days, right? Starting Wednesday.
Tomorrow is when the first four is.
Oh, right, the first four. I always forget every year about them.
Yeah, it's a really strange rule, but I'm okay with it. But it's to see some teams, especially when it first got in. I know VCU in 2011 made the Final Four, so anything could happen, and that's kind of the theme of this March Madness. This field, aside from a couple teams that are on like the upper tier of just being by far and away the better teams, it's a wide open field. So I've been really digging in to the brackets, and I'm really I think I don't know how you all want to go about this or how long I should go on about like upsets or potential Final Four picks, but any suggestions for that? Or
well, let's just dive into some storylines. I mean, I think the general consensus is that Alabama is in a pretty decent position. I mean, they've like in terms of the bracket and also talent wise is my understanding, and that Kansas kind of got screwed over.
Yes, so Kansas got without a doubt the hardest region because I think they're pretty good for in terms of one seeds. I think they're pretty good for the Sweet 16. But what I've noticed through watching Kansas a lot this year, they have two players in Jalen Wilson and Grady Dick, who I think can carry a team to the second weekend. But outside of those two, I think they're incredibly beatable, and that's why in this region, I have UConn meeting them in the Sweet 16, and I think UConn can beat them. So as a 4 seed, I think they're pretty. Just in terms of their point production, Adama Sanogo, Jordan Hawkins, and Tristan Newton are all average double figures. I think they can give Kansas a game at least, and if they can do that, I think they can beat either Gonzaga or UCLA, the 3 or 2 in that region, and I think UConn's a Final Four sleeper. So out of the West, they can do some damage. I wasn't too high on UConn until I saw this bracket because I think VCU and St. Mary's, the 5-12, I think VCU can win against St. Mary's, and I think UConn can beat VCU being up in New York, being close to home. And then who knows? I think Gonzaga is a bit weaker now. UCLA's had some injuries. And so look for UConn in that region for sure. So, and then in terms of the other team you mentioned being Alabama.
Yeah.
The whole Brandon Miller thing, I don't know how much you all know about that.
I do know a bit. I mean,
Wild.
Yeah, pretty insane. I saw the walk-on stuff.
Yeah, and again, I just really it doesn't even speak to like whether or not whether he knew the gun was in his car or not. Or anything. I don't know. I wasn't there. It's a very fishy situation. It's a very sad situation because a woman lost her life. And so that's going to be hanging over Alabama's program, and it has. I mean, up until the SEC tournament, which they won, and pretty convincingly, they weren't doing very well. And so I think Alabama, with the region they're in, they can make an Elite Eight run. I think they can go further than Kansas because the other teams in this region are pretty weak up until then. Because that's why upsets galore for a lot of tournaments, but I wanted to pick a lot of good upsets and not just pick them for the sake of like, oh, I want a 13 seed to go to the Elite Eight or something.
Right.
Because San Diego State and Virginia in this region, the 5 and 4 seeds respectively, I think they both can lose to Charleston and Furman, and I think Charleston is a very good sleeper team to go to the Sweet 16.
Interesting.
They're good.
Yeah. I think San Diego State, if they can beat Charleston, I think they can beat either Virginia or Furman. So I think the winner of the San Diego State-Charleston game, whichever one you want to go with in your bracket, I would pick in the Sweet 16.
Because Charleston were like 30-3, right? And they almost lost their conference championship, but they got the automatic berth because they pulled it out. But they were a team that I think I was worried were going to miss the bracket if they didn't win, but they absolutely deserve to be there. And I think I agree with you. Are like a feisty pick for a.
So that's an easy 12 over 5.
Yeah, 12 over 5, right?
Bracket. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I'm looking at 12 over 5. And then, that's the same thing with Florida Atlantic. I think they were I think they were more in the tournament than Charleston, but they are also like 31-3. But I will get to them shortly. But
how about Duke over Oral Roberts? That might be another. I mean, I feel like that people I've been following on Twitter have been saying that Duke's been underrated going into the tournament, and I'm sorry to say that out loud.
So here's my thing about Duke and the ACC in general. The ACC has had a very, very weak year. Yeah. And that's why I mentioned Virginia already. I think they can be beat by Furman. I don't think they're making it past the round of 32, if anything. Miami, which won the ACC regular season title, cannot play defense. According to Ken Palm, if I can pull it up, they are 132nd in defensive efficiency. Miami is.
Well, then you're hoping that they beat Drake, so that Indiana faces them in the second round. How about that, Will?
Yes. In the Midwest region, I think Indiana got a bit lucky. I think they can beat Kent State and Drake. Or Miami. Well, maybe not Drake, but Miami I think they can beat. Drake's a bit more iffy. But going back to Duke, it's like they rolled through. They're the hottest team in the ACC, but they're beating teams that have a glaring problem. And I mean, UNC was one of them that didn't even make the tournament, and rightfully so. And Virginia and Miami definitely have their problems. I think Duke can beat Oral Roberts. That's going to be the game of the weekend. Duke and or the first round. Duke and Oral Roberts is going to be the game that I would consider a lot of people should be able to watch. And whoever wins that game is my pick for the Sweet 16 because the 4 seed in that region is Tennessee, and Tennessee cannot play. They cannot shoot. They can't score. And so I think Tennessee can get past their opponent in Louisiana, but I'm just making my friend who's a Tennessee fan happy by saying that because he knows that Tennessee's not going to the Sweet 16.
And Oral Roberts has one of my favorite recent college players, Max Asmus. I think that's how you say his name.
Yeah, Max Asmus.
Yeah,
he's spelled so weirdly, but Max Asmus.
Yeah, it's ABMAS and it's spelled pronounced Asmus. He is like a water bug, super quick, super good shooting point guard on Oral Roberts, and he was kind of a fun guy to watch in last year's tournament. I will definitely be looking forward to seeing him. Hopefully, he can stifle the post Coach K Blue Devils.
What's your take on the Longhorns' chances, Will?
Oh, the Longhorns! I think Texas. They got a bit of an unfair matchup against, especially the 7-10 matchup in that region with Texas A&M and Penn State. Penn State is a team that I think Texas will be able to beat because they have guards that can counter Penn State's three-point shooting. They're the best three-point shooting team in the Big Ten. And Texas with Marcus Carr and their other guards, I can't think of them off the top of my head. I think they can beat Penn State, and if so, I think they're definitely an Elite Eight team. But if they face Texas A&M, who is underseeded as a 7 seed, who got red hot in the SEC, beat several very good teams like Alabama, they beat Tennessee. They went to the championship game. They lost to Alabama. No shame in that loss. But a 7 seed for Texas A&M is a slap in the face, and so they're going to be playing pissed off. And if Texas A&M and Texas meet, that is a game that if you have those two teams matching up, I would possibly pick A&M in that game. That's a bit of a controversial take, but I think Texas A&M can pull that off. Even though Texas, they just won the Big 12 tournament against Kansas. They beat Kansas twice in the span of a week. I get that. But in the NCAA tournament, you never, ever know what can happen.
And Texas sometimes wilts in the tournament. We've seen it time and time again. It's been even when Rick Barnes was at the helm, we've seen that. Like it's. I kind of have to believe Texas can get a little bit farther than like the round of 32, like by seeing it actually happen. And A&M definitely has been way more feisty down the stretch, which I'm interested in. We've had a lot of I love to see an interstate rivalry game early on in the tournament.
Yeah, I totally agree. And again, with to your point, like Rick Barnes had a bunch of different NBA ready superstars like Miles Turner and who was on that team in the the 2011 year where they lost to, like, Arizona and Derek Williams. I can't remember their names, but there's always been sort of a letdown in right. the Texas Longhorn ways. And I'm sorry, David Griscom, if you ever see this, but again, if Texas plays Penn State, then I have them going further. But again, I think Houston. It all depends on if Marcus Sasser, their star guard, gets healthy, suffering a groin injury. I think they can beat. They're definitely favored in this region, and I'm sorry to say, as an Indiana fan, I don't think they're beating Houston with or without Marcus Sasser. I think they can get to the Sweet 16 if all matches up properly. I think it's going to be tougher if they face Drake than Miami. So we'll see there. And then finally, I think in a couple more points in the East region, which is kind of like the most wild region, like the Oral Roberts Duke section. If Purdue being the 1 seed, and I'm not trying to harp on Purdue being the arch rival and everything, but I think if Memphis defeats Florida Atlantic, I think Memphis can make a big run in the tournament. Oof. That team scares me, and I think if Florida Atlantic wins that 9-8 matchup, I think Purdue can easily win, and they can make a big run because. In the other matchups like Kansas State, who I'm not high on, Kentucky has struggled a lot, Michigan State I'm not too high on, and Marquette being a 2 seed, and I think rightfully so, they're a team I think that can go to the Elite Eight because they especially with their guard Tyler Kolek, who's one of the best point guards that I've seen all year, and so I think whoever gets out of that region can meet Marquette, either Memphis or Purdue, and I think either of those teams can win. And if Memphis does beat Florida Atlantic and Purdue and Memphis match up, then I might be calling it. Purdue might be the first 1 seed to go down. I'm not saying that as a biased IU fan because I have a soft spot a little bit for Purdue because my cousin and uncle are big Purdue fans, and I love them a lot. But I think they got an unfair matchup in this region.
They can,
especially again.
They're chokers, though.
Sorry. Yeah, especially they lost to St. Peter's last year.
Yeah, that's what. Right, exactly.
I remember that now. Yeah.
I remember where I was when that happened. I was outside Arlene's grocery, and I was literally watching the game on my phone.
Oh my god!
No, I was losing my mind.
Oh my god!
But
all right, well, go on.
No, it's okay. I was just saying, like they are really good. And Zach Edey, their like massive center, has really been showing out for the last few games. He just dropped like 32 points. I don't remember who they were playing, but he had a great game.
I think it was Ohio State.
It was Ohio State. He had a great game against Ohio State. I just think it's a matter of they just got it. They're similar to me as Texas. Matt Painter's been their coach for like 20 years, and he's had a few deep runs, but he's just never been able to really punch the ticket. So I just think Edie might give him their best shot because they got close with Jaden Ivey last year, but this is, I think, his best shot to potentially get to the Final Four, and we'll see if he's able to not get upset by whoever they're playing. But I think it's pretty wide open. I'm excited. I'm excited for it to get started. It's always one of the best sports events of the year.
It truly is.
So I really think the window is pretty open for a lot of teams to make a run or surprise us. So I'll be looking forward to it. You'll have to call back in, Will, as we get further into the tournament.
All right.
I absolutely will. Sorry, Emily.
Final pick.
Oh yes, yeah.
I want your top two and your winner.
Yeah, well, I'm going to start with the Final Four. Just
there you
because
go.
Yes, yeah. The Final Four, and then we'll filter.
I didn't want to put too much pressure on you, but yes, as is tradition, Final Four.
Yeah, of course, and then I will let you all get on with the show. So I have, in the first Final Four game, I have Arizona and Memphis in the first game, and then in the second game, I have Houston, barring if Marcus Sasser can stay healthy throughout this tournament, and UConn. So I have Arizona moving past Memphis, I think, with Tubelis and Umar Ballo and Kerr Kriisa. They have a lot of foreign players because Tommy Lloyd's their head coach, and he a former assistant at Gonzaga who got a lot of the foreign players there. And then I have Houston moving past UConn, so it sets up Arizona and Houston. And because the Final Four is in Houston, Texas, of course I have to pick Houston. They've been possibly the best team all season, maybe them and Alabama. And so I am going with that matchup. Houston wins 72-68. There you have it.
Close. I agree, though. It's hard. I know it's sometimes too like chalky and not super exciting to pick a number one seed. But Houston, every other team that's either been number one or close has had some significant slide or a string of upsets. I'm looking at you, Tennessee, but Houston has kind of been pretty consistently dominant. Only I think a few close game against Alabama, but like not a whole lot of stains on their record. So I think they're really the team to beat. So I definitely see where you're coming from there, Will.
All right, Will.
The only one seed in the Final Four. Yeah, and thank you all again.
You are. I appreciate it. You are our March Madness correspondent,
our guru.
And good luck to Indiana. Be rooting for them.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Best
luck to all of your brackets.
All
right.
Yeah, talk to you soon.
Bye.
Right.
Bye, Will.
Bye.
Good stuff. All right. Well, we do have some interesting breaking news on the NFL free agency front. Sam Darnold to the 49ers. I love this for the 49ers. I love it. You hearing that, Bradley?
Fascinating.
I just think the bar is so low for what a quarterback needs to do to be successful in the Kyle Shanahan offense. Sam Darnold has the ability to really, in terms of intermediate and short throws, be really accurate, and that's kind of what you need in a Kyle Shanahan offense. And I think that they must be incredibly concerned about Brock Purdy's elbow, because he still, I don't think, has had surgery on it, because the inflammation is still this bad over, 2 months later? Feel terribly for the guy. But they need
someone to start week one. That's not Josh Johnson.
Well, I think that Trey Lance is going to start week one. I do.
Right.
But
to have the backstop if Purdy's still not healthy and Lance either is also, if there's any issue with Lance's timetable, if the injury gets re-aggravated, or if he's just not performing the way that they want to, you can go to Darnold. Darnold probably had his best season as a pro in Carolina, or best half season, however much he was playing. And I think if anyone's going to get more out of him that coaches like, Adam Gase and Steve Wilkes were not, or Matt Rule were not able to get out of him, I think it would be Kyle Shanahan.
Oh my gosh. Kyle Shanahan will, I predict this now. I think he'll resurrect Sam Darnold's career. Not saying Sam Darnold is a top 25 quarterback, top 20, but Kyle Shanahan can do that with anybody. And I don't know. I actually see this working out pretty well, and good for Sam Darnold. Finally, he'll be on the team and reunited, by the way, with Christian McCaffrey. Finally, he'll be on the team where he's not completely like thrown to the wolves. Now, let's talk about this Jimmy Garoppolo deal, because this is also, interesting for different reasons to me. Jimmy Garoppolo to the Raiders, 3 years, $67.5 million on the contract. Again, that's the top line number. I guarantee you there's a lot of fluff in that.
Yeah, definitely some cap trickeration.
They're going to be able to get out of this deal 1-2 years from now. If not one. I mean, it's just like, where are the guarantees? We don't have the full numbers yet. So whatever Schefter, Rappaport say at the beginning is not the real number almost ever. But Josh McDaniels, so they did need to sign somebody because they let go of Derek Carr, and they are at 7, and they probably understand now that unless they trade up, they're not getting a quarterback in this draft, or at least the one that's their pick of the litter, right? I mean, I could see them taking Will Levis at 7 and him falling to them, but I don't even know. There's a lot to figure out at this point.
Well, because basically in the order, the only team that I wouldn't think is interested in a quarterback is Arizona.
Yes.
Other than that, like the first 5 to 6 picks, I could probably besides
Panthers, Texans, okay, then Cardinals. They're not taking one. Then the Colts. So that's 3 off the board.
That's 3
right
I think
away
are
in the
instant
top 4.
QB picks. Yeah.
If the Cardinals don't even the Cardinals could trade down with a team, and then it's all 4 gone, which I don't see that happening, but definitely the top 2, they're gone, right?
So my assumption would be if the Cardinals stay put, which I think is probably going to happen unless they get a kind of a king's ransom for that 3rd pick. That's Will Anderson or Jalen Carter, barring any, the character issues being the roadblock.
I think Jalen Carter will be okay. It seems like it was just the kids being kids, and a horrible tragedy happened.
Yeah, and he's complying with the authorities now, and so I think I'm sure. I think even if he wasn't taking it seriously before, whoever is around him is seriously making him do so, which I think is good.
Yeah. Positionally, though, I don't know if you want to take a guy that's a defensive tackle in that high up, but
right.
Right. I'd probably
be Will Anderson.
I'd probably go with Anderson or Tyree there. But regardless, it's just I get bad vibes from this Josh McDaniels led regime here. You guys are swapping out Derek Carr for Jimmy Garoppolo. Derek Carr's been in the locker room for a really long time. You got Devontae Adams, who I saw was Instagramming some cryptic stuff in the wake of this news. You're swapping a low-end starter for another low-end starter, and I don't know. I'd probably, gun to my head, take Derek Carr over Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm sure that the money is better for the team, but it's like McDaniels is just taking a guy that he's familiar with, and based on what I've heard about the vibes in that organization, Josh McDaniels is not a cuddly and friendly coach. He's not a player's coach. I don't like the energy I'm getting out of Las Vegas right now. I don't know. I have a bad feeling about how this is going to end.
Well, I think the only positive I could potentially glean from this is that it seems like McDaniels is only really comfortable working with quarterbacks that he has any sort of history with. He doesn't. It was clearly in the sense that there clearly was some sort of disconnect between him and Derek Carr. And it's not even that Derek Carr played really poorly. It's just they had so many games last year where they were a play or even just some level of offensive cohesion away from winning 6-1 score games.
Yeah.
There was always some strategic or schematic blind spot that seemed to always come up when they were in close games. And I'm wondering if potentially McDaniel's working with somebody he's worked with before, that it might be more advantageous for him. But at the same time,
sure,
we've never seen him as a head coach outside of the Bill Belichick umbrella succeed. He's never
I think
succeeded
he has a
somewhere
real
else.
issue with relating to players. I really do.
And that's almost, and then if that's the case, if you also kind of can't really work outside of the kind of Belichickian power structure, it's a problem.
I don't care how much of an offensive genius McDaniels is if he can't relate to players. Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, offensive geniuses,
Right.
really good with players. Really good with players. I mean, Shanahan in particular, it's like he smoothed over some very weird locker room situations in San Francisco when it comes to like the quarterback position and all that kind of stuff.
And compare that to other places.
Right.
Where there's been quarterback situations that you could call fluid, and
that would have never happened.
And they are not occurring that way.
Zach Wilson,
Yeah.
regardless of how badly he played, would have never gotten publicly thrown under the bus by his teammates and by the coach in a Kyle Shanahan.
And you know, and like if we'll recall, just not to get too far into the weeds here, but just as a comparison, they traded real assets for Trey Lance for him to not play for 2 seasons. Like, in another organization, for Jimmy G to come back, then for him to get injured and have to start your third quarterback, who was the last pick in the draft. Like, if you're another team, a la the Jets or somebody like that, that's causing a lot of problems in the locker room or a lot of consternation.
Right.
And it just didn't, and it isn't, and they made the conference finals.
And then compare that to the Raiders. I'm concerned that McDaniels is trying to build something from the ground up, and he's going to try to take his time in creating a culture, but that's okay to do. But then that's completely incompatible with trading for Devontae Adams and giving him a massive contract.
It's kind of a
extension.
similar thing to the Commanders, with maybe more pieces, I guess, figured out. But it's also still kind of like, what's the
goal
trajectory?
here?
What's the goal? Like, what's the ultimate endpoint for this type of roster construction?
Right. You're not. They are in no man's land, and the Commanders is an apt kind of comparison in that we're just going to do what we do, and there doesn't seem to be a real commitment to either being bad enough to rebuild.
That's the right
or going all in. And I just, given how Devontae Adams is speaking publicly, and by all accounts, he's like incredibly well liked and a great guy. For him to be having concerns, and everything we've heard of how Josh McDaniels treats the players in those situations, we're in a new era in the NFL. These young guys, they're going to know that the Patriots were a dynasty, but that's not going to automatically give you cachet when you walk in, when you're their 21-year-old rookie walking into that locker room. People want a Dayball, they want a Shanahan, they want a McVay, they want a workplace where they're respected a little bit, and I have my doubts that that's happening in under Josh McDaniels.
And also, there is something to be said about the success rate of people under the Belichick coaching tree who are not Bill Belichick getting results when they leave the organization to take the helm somewhere else. There's a reason that 2 years later, Matt Patricia and Joe Judge were back on Belichick's staff doing whatever the hell they did last year. There's a reason Bill O'Brien, after becoming the head coach of the Texans and the GM, trading away DeAndre Hopkins for David Johnson, and he got to at least won the division a few times. He at least got to the playoffs.
Yeah,
but then going to Alabama to kind of rehabilitate himself afterwards, and here he is back as the OC for the Patriots. Like, it's basically Brian Flores aside. Like,
he's the other notable.
There's really not.
But he was a tough, hard ass too.
Absolutely,
I mean, Tua
that's
was
the characteristic.
Was crying about all the hard coaching down there from him.
And so I just think it's interesting to see kind of a clear pattern, except for maybe a few exceptions, of guys who once they leave the nest, so to speak, in New England, they're not successful.
Yeah, it's just to see, and I just want to pull this up here. Let me just find this Devontae Adams. There's so much happening right now, so it's hard to. He wrote this on Instagram story. If we haven't talked in the last 3 weeks, don't hit me about this shit. Thanks.
Who said that?
Devontae Adams.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right.
I don't know what that means, but
clearly
it's related to this Jimmy G thing. People responding what 2 hours of Jimmy G does to a man.
Man, Jimmy G in Vegas. That's going to be wild.
Well, he will do very well.
Unbelievable.
He will do quite well in the nightlife scene.
Absolutely.
And then before we wrap up here, let's just mention Jalen Ramsey to the Miami Dolphins.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Big deal. Look, he's not the number one shutdown corner that he was like his first entire tenure in Jacksonville, where he was one of the greatest corners in his prime. Like, there was a few-year period where he was just unbelievable. He kind of dipped off when he went to the Rams, but he was still really good. And then he won a Super Bowl, so awesome. But back in Miami for a third-round pick, he's still getting paid good money, and the Rams just can't afford it. And the Dolphins are in a rookie contract situation with their quarterback, and they're stacking up that defense. I mean, when you see some of the names on paper on that defense, they have Bradley Chubb.
Yeah,
they have Jalen Ramsey.
So Ramsey in the secondary.
Jalen Carter, or no. Jalen, who they, gosh, my brain hurts at this point. The guy they took in the first round who was originally.
They got Jalen Phillips.
Jalen Phillips, yeah.
Who's I think doing well. I mean, at least just very athletic, very, very high.
No, he was coming on at the end of the year.
So, yeah, you got Jalen Phillips, Christian Wilkins, Zach Sealer on the line. If Sealer doesn't get signed elsewhere, but he's still on the team as of now.
It's Xavier
Howard and Jalen Ramsey.
Jalen Ramsey. I mean, if Jalen Ramsey can play, if they're 1A and 1B at cornerback, that's pretty dangerous.
And that can kind of shore up that they're not relying on like Noah Igbenogany. I think his name is.
Yeah.
Who they were playing a decent amount, but I think he was kind of having his early career struggles.
Right.
So I think that is even though they're both a little older, I think it's a pretty reliable pairing of Howard and Ramsey. And also, I'm just excited to see what that group of personnel, whether Seiler is there or not, can do. I mean, Chubb is locked up long term. I imagine Wilkins will be or is going to be relatively soon. What that group of guys can do under a Vic Fangio scheme.
Yeah, it will be interesting. I totally forget every day that Vic Fangio is going to be in Miami, because there was that weird back and forth, right, where he wasn't necessarily going to go to Miami. He was maybe going to go to San Francisco, but it is going to be they're going all in for a Super Bowl in the next 2 years. And look, I understand it. They're stacked on every position except quarterback, and the line needs some improvement, but the line's not horrible.
Yeah, I mean the line
and
thing
Tua doesn't have to do much in the Mike McDaniel scheme.
That's I think the idea, almost a similar kind of 49ers model, is if the quarterback play can be sort of amenable with all of the skill position talent and the defense kind of firing on all cylinders, a contender can really be in the cards there. I think the only thing with the offensive line primarily is that you want Liam Eichenberg and Austin Jackson, two of the younger guys, to kind of continue to improve, and you just need, just from both on an on-field but also an investment level, you need Teron Armstead to be healthy.
Yeah.
And that's always been the issue with him. He is a really, really good player, super athletic, one of the best offensive linemen when healthy, but that's the big caveat, is he gets hurt almost every season.
Yeah, and Tua, of course, has to be healthy.
And that's the thing, absolutely. He has to be ready to go.
I'm surprised that Sam Darnold wasn't someone that the Miami Dolphins targeted as a backup, because they need a high-end backup. I mean, I no offense, I would take Sam Darnold over Mike White.
No, of course, I agree. I think based on what they showed last year, I'd probably do the same, but I figure McDaniel could probably get a decent amount out of Mike White with that offense.
You're right.
The one thing I'm curious about, if this is actually true and nothing otherwise happens, there were reports before we came on that Austin Eckler was requesting a trade.
Right.
I honestly think because the run game has not been super, super high octane in Miami. I mean, they got Jeff Wilson, which was okay, but not like, I wouldn't say the permanent answer. And besides that, they basically, Miles Gaskin, like they've had a few options that I don't think are long term or at least permanent. If I'm the Dolphins, I would maybe try and figure out if I could get Austin Eckler.
The problem is that he's clearly requesting a trade, I think, because he wants an extension.
So in the sense that
wants more money.
It might just not even be an actual request. He might actually just want to stick around and just get more. Which fair enough.
What these rumors like? Oh, Derrick Henry might be traded.
Yeah,
Austin
right.
Eckler. It's like, what team is lining up to trade for and then extend a running back?
It's a good call, especially Henry too. I think that would be a bit of an albatross. But actually, maybe both would be too, honestly.
But look,
Eckler
honestly, the Dolphins are stacked. They're going to be good. It's just how far can Tua take them?
Yep.
Can he play in weather? Can he stay healthy? I hope that he can. I love Mike McDaniel to death. So, yeah, fascinating stuff. And maybe they honestly, and sorry, not to just harp on the Tua thing, but just given the fact that he was kind of publicly a bit insecure about his position, and I think that was the issue with Brian Flores, was being pretty hard on him. Tua's just, I think, a sensitive kind of guy. Bringing in Darnold might be too much of a, maybe he was a starter last year. Like maybe he could take over. They might want somebody.
Well, it would maybe again. We were talking sort of about like the whole like the second two quarterbacks that are kind of in not as maybe similar situations, but like kind of like, oh, two quarterbacks that have started for teams before.
Right.
It's a QB competition. Like, oh my God, who's going to win?
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Maybe you don't want to like even attract even the perception or the appearance of that at all.
Yeah, exactly.
With a guy you just picked up his option.
Right. Exactly. All right, guys, I am tired, so I'm going to hang up the phones. I'm so sorry. I apologize. We will take more calls next week. Just big day. There's never an off day in the NFL.
Well, I am pleased that we at least got a March Madness primer before the games get started, so that's good. And guys, I promise you, there's still the NBA regular season is still going, so we still have some time to get into it, and we will. There has been some clamoring that we haven't discussed the Sacramento Kings enough. We can do that at some point. Promise you.
Great story, but I'm sorry. Yeah.
But the playoffs will start, and we will get into it.
Look, this is my area of expertise, and I feel very confident about my NFL takes. I'm often too confident. So this is where it's easiest for me to slip into this mode.
But just for some fan service, light the beam, guys. Light the beam.
I don't get it.
Oh, really?
Oh, okay. Yes. Sorry,
okay.
sorry.
That's okay. I was like, oh, no, I think we've talked about this.
Yeah, we have.
Someone clip that.
Yeah.
Me saying like the beam.
No, don't do it. Kowalski from Nebraska. Howdy. What is the ESVN official stance on horse racing? Is it a sport? And if it is, when are we going to start seeing some coverage? Kowalski from Nebraska. It's a sport. Not one I love to cover, I will say. Like, I think it's different. Dressage or jumping is different. It's not as horrible to the horse. Like the racing, I'm sorry, it's hard for me to watch. I understand people like betting on it, but
it's like pretty. I have an interest. Like I think it's kind of a fascinating competition, but also I think it's also kind of because of how historic it is in the sense I feel like it's been going on for so long, but it happens. Like the big ones happen so infrequently, like that there's three, big races, I would say, at least from my perception, that it's just I participate in so many sport I watch so many other sports that it's hard to like there are a few things that I'm just not gonna really get to.
Yeah. Tater tot. It's amazing how long you two are able to talk coherently. Great job all day today. Thank you. J-Man Raps. Hey, I'm a big-time tennis match tonight. It's Canadian phenom Bianca Andreescu takes on the number 1 seed at Italian Wells. Also, Yankee Empire versus Canada in the WBC. Tough loss for you guys. Last night, I think you meant left his best. I think you're referring to
the World Baseball Classic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've heard some fun things. The U.S. is a
I
pretty.
was seeing some clips from like Dominican Republic
Yeah.
versus Venezuela. It was pretty nuts.
Yeah, U.S. seems to have a pretty stacked team, and everyone is, I think, having a fun time rooting for the Venezuelan team because not only I think it's a good squad, but their fans are extremely emotive and having a great time.
Love it, love it. I mean, I'm gonna root for them out of principle politically, just because of like they get the
Yeah.
WBC if we're gonna keep sanctions on
Yeah,
them.
absolutely. they deserve something.
Yes.
We won't give them.
Noble villain on an NBA subject. How do you guys feel about OKC right now? I haven't been a huge NBA guy, but they've caught my interest this year, and I've been tuning in to see them. I mean, look, they have a superstar player. There's that, right?
I think they're I mean they're extremely green. They're
Yes.
really young. They
Young.
have like an average age of like 27. But honestly, given the sum of their parts, they've been playing really well. Shea is an I would say bona fide star
Superstar,
player.
yeah.
Josh Giddey, while being a little bit limited offensively, is one of the most like creative passers I've ever seen. And guys, watch Jalen Williams, and I know there are two Jalen Williams, the Jalen Williams. He is a 6'5" guard who has a 7'2" wingspan. He is phenomenal to watch. He's so athletic. He's a great defender. He can knock down shots. He's already really turning my head, and he's a rookie. So
And they still have Chet Holmgren.
and they have Chet Holmgren who literally hasn't played one
at
game
all. Yeah, right.
So I think the future is bright for OKC no matter what happens this season.
They better be given how many picks they allocate.
Oh my God, Sam
that
Presti's
sell-off.
like a chipmunk. Like he hoards draft picks in his cheeks. Like,
I understand it though. Dan from Columbus. Emma says she's concerned about Bryce Young's size, but every woman I've dated has assured me that size doesn't matter. Okay.
All right. Well.
Woke banker. I'd love to see Tampa Baker happen. I mean, if I were him, I don't know if that's the team I'd go to.
I'd want to
Tater
figure out who is going to be catching passes for me.
Yeah.
Like if Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, I don't think they're going to leave, but I just think that it could be something. I don't know. I think it's possible.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, it's like, it seems like also Mike Evans lost a step this year. So
Yeah, he's getting old. I mean, he's 32, I think.
been
30,
incredibly consistent.
I think he's had
mean,
9 straight 1,000-yard seasons.
Yes,
or something like that. Like
it's
something
amazing.
unreal. Yeah.
He's underrated as a player. And
That's like a Hall of Fame case, I'd almost say.
Tater Tot, Carolina had picks to spare from the McCaffrey trade too. And the final IM of the day, Majority Report wardrobe coordinator. I think taking Stroud #1 is a mistake and the Panthers got fleeced. Don't get me wrong, Stroud is my favorite Ohio State quarterback of the last 20 years because he went 0-2 against Michigan. He is a good quarterback, but here's who he threw to. Garrett Wilson, first rounder. Chris Olave, first rounder. Jackson Smith, I can never pronounce his name, but he's going to be a first rounder this year. Marvin Harrison Jr., a future first rounder. And Emeka Egbuka, the first receiver in the 2021 class. Julian Fleming, the #1 receiver in the 2020 class. Jameson Williams transferred to Alabama because he wasn't seeing the field on that roster. Stroud only uses his legs in the Georgia game, and I'd be more inclined to weigh the other 25 games where he didn't do it at all. Fair.
I mean,
but
Joe
at the
Burrow
same
was throwing
time,
to Justin Jefferson. I think it's
and
Jamar Chase.
Jamar Chase,
his now teammate. I don't necessarily think only strength of your supporting cast means that your personal value is deflated.
Tua was playing with Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle,
right?
like
and Henry Ruggs and
right, yeah. You have to evaluate the player regardless of the positions the groups that he's playing with, and I think that at least for me, I've been consistent in trying to remove the player from the supporting cast. In this instance, it's just the player is great and the supporting cast is great too. So just watch him throwing at the combine. I think anybody can look at it and say that's the best looking thrower of the entire class pretty easily. Mechanically, release, strength, difficulty of throwing. He's got size. He's got the brains. I know that he's not Trevor Lawrence, but I think he's very close to a really, really significant franchise quarterback QB1 at the start of the draft, and I could be wrong about that, but that's just my take. All right, guys, I will be back tomorrow on Tuesday on MR, so will Bradley. Wonderful show today. Really appreciate you all. Almost 2 hours on ESVN today. Hopefully we'll have some damn resolution about Aaron Rodgers. I thought
Shocking that we didn't get anything over.
well, not shocking. I thought it
2
might
hours.
break in this show, but it did not. We will see you on next Monday.
Bye-bye.